Talofa Lava, welcome everyone to another episode of the Polynesian Eyes podcast. We have a live digital conversation here. Tua Fale coming straight out of South Central Texas. Have also joining us Mr. Atearoa. How is the land of the long white cloud today, Masi?
Beautiful weather here in New Zealand, nice and hot. I
Oh,
talked to
yeah.
some of my colleagues today down in Wellington. It's not so hot. It's still cloudy and rainy down in Wellington, but here in Auckland, beautiful day. Can't complain. But how,
Hmm.
how about you, Dwa? How's Central
Yeah,
Texas
it's
weather-wise?
South Central Texas is good. I spent the first half of the week out in Ohio where it was in the 30s. It's getting cold here in
Mhm.
the northern hemisphere. Went from San Antonio to Salt Lake, had a layover over there, had whenever it's funny when you start traveling quite
Mhm.
a bit, and I've been traveling a lot, every airport you have like your favorite spots to go to, right?
Go-to places.
Yeah. If I go to Salt Lake, guaranteed Cafe Rio, right? Unless my flight doesn't allow me to um, go straight to Cafe Rio, have a Cafe Rio. So I had that. Then I went to Cleveland, went to Akron. It was in the 30s. On my way back, I fly into Atlanta. There's like this uh southern food spot on Terminal B
Yeah.
at Atlanta. I go there, get some fried chicken, mac and cheese,
Okay.
some southern
The
food.
southern
Um,
soul food.
yes. And then, came from the cold 30 degrees up in Ohio to beautiful San Antonio. This is why I live in Texas, 72 degrees, right? In
That's
heading
good
towards
weather.
winter. Yeah.
That's good weather in
Yeah.
Texas.
So that's why I'm here.
Curious.
It gets hot in the summer, which is
Yeah.
looks like you're heading towards the heat, but
Yep.
I love it here, and this is my favorite time to be here in San Antonio.
Nice. Just curious too. What's your order in Cafe Rio? Do you switch it up or do you have a go-to
I have a go-to. Sometimes I'll switch it up, but my go-to is typically the sweet pork burrito.
burrito? Yep, me
Yeah,
too.
right.
That's the one.
Enchilada
Yeah.
style,
Yes.
and I usually get that. But the last couple times at the Salt Lake airport, I haven't had the greatest experience. So I switched it to the salad. The salad's still pretty good. Sweet pork
Okay.
salad, everything in it. And then, they put a tortilla at the bottom with cheese. So I eat the salad, then I
Mm.
roll up the tortilla and eat that bad boy too. So that's my go-to.
Okay.
What's
That's
yours?
good. No, no, I'm the same with you. But since COVID, do I've noticed? I don't know the pork burrito, the sweet pork burrito hasn't been like it's been mixed reviews. It used to be pretty good, but I don't know if since COVID I've kind of tried it twice. And I'm like, it was okay.
Yeah,
It wasn't crazy.
that that
But
was my
yeah, it was
experience
funny
the
when you
last
said that
couple
because
times. Yeah.
yeah, okay, nice, that's cool.
All right. Lotu says Malo Kautama. Lotu Malo.
Hey,
Welcome
Paulo
to the
Lotu.
live digital conversation. Malo. So yeah, today we are going to primarily focus on our brothers and sisters of Hawaii. We're going to walk through a documentary of Kamehameha and his journey in uniting the Hawaiian Islands. But before we get there, I thought it would be nice to do a couple things here real quick. Let me share this. Before I get into that, much anything else, any kind of news, anything that interesting that you wanted to bring up before we jump into.
I don't know if we kind of discussed, but you know how the prime minister of Tonga he's resigned. You know,
Oh
he's
yeah.
I don't know if we talked about it, but he's resigned. It was funny. I saw some of the post comments he made. He said he did for the betterment of the country, but if that was the truth, he would have done that before they had all their debates because
Well,
him
and
and
up to the
some of
last
his
second,
followers
right?
up to the
To
last
the
second when
very
the
last
speaker
second.
until the speaker said no, that wasn't good enough reason regarding the dates of the submission of the vote of no confidence, and the speaker was going to push through to have the vote, and then he inclined to say he had something to say, and that's when he resigned. So to me, you can read that between the lines. It was
Yeah.
not really the betterment of the country. He knew he was gonna lose, and then he said, "It's better to resign than have everyone fire you."
Yeah,
But
make a political move.
political move. But yeah, that's kind of been the biggest news so far in the Pacific. I know Vanuatu recently had an earthquake, so they're dealing
Yes.
with some issues there. It was I think 3.4 magnitude earthquake shake that's happening there. But other than that, that's kind of that I'm just thinking right now.
What
Kind of
are
the
yeah,
big things
let's
going on.
dig into the PM because that's probably the biggest
Yeah.
shaker, right? I'm gonna look up a video here real quick, but what's kind of your analysis? What are your thoughts, Masi, on
Okay.
at first people thought like, oh great, we're gonna go through a vote of no confidence. We're
Mm,
not gonna have, the last one didn't have enough votes. People were thinking this
mhm.
was gonna be the same, and then all of a sudden, just before the vote, the PM's like, I withdraw
Yeah.
myself, I
Yeah.
resign. So what
Yes.
was, what are your thoughts on, because that caught everybody off guard. Why do you
Yeah.
think he did that? Or here's a better question. What changed, right? What changed from, oh, we think this is just going to be a formality and him keeping it, but obviously people who defended him last time were not going to defend him, or at least that's what he thought. What was
Yeah.
the change?
So if this is my interaction. I was in the Kingdom of Tonga during that time when that
Mhm,
when that happened, and prior to the resignation of Xiaoxi Sovareni. Most of the comments that I got just from people in Mua and in Nahake and Hoi and everything, they said just probably the number one. They said it was hard to get access to him because he was constantly always away from the country, and you could argue he was away to try to get some funding or some agreements, but it wasn't materializing in a way that was um, helping people to have access. Because I think a big part of you being a leader, people having the opportunity to access to you regarding
mhm,
questions or regarding even domestic projects that maybe ideas that people, because there's quite a few prominent Tongans business people in Tonga that can really help the country. But if they don't have access to the government to allow permits or to get the perfect, to get the right, I just say authorization to do something, you really kind of slow progress in that way. And when you think about it, we all know this particular PM or former PM, he was carrying quite a few portfolios, right? So it's hard when he's trying to do all these things, and that's why he's traveling a lot because he's doing all these different portfolios, and he was still, even though the king said he was taking away the Ministry of Defense and also foreign, was it Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but
mhm.
he was still executing and doing all those functions. At the same time, he was also the minister education, also the minister of, I don't know. He was there. There were so many, and not remember. And that's there's also a portfolio for the prime minister. So
Yes.
you're I don't. I mean, you gotta be a crazy person in a way that you can do all of that efficiently. Like there's no way he could have done that efficiently. And he was, to me, that was the biggest number one complaint that I just heard from the people saying it was hard to get access to the guy because he was just always gone, right? And then when you're always gone,
Mhm.
it's not running properly when you're managing quite a few portfolios that it's not working efficiently.
Yeah. Well, and
That was
that's the
those
thing.
two. Those are the two big concerns, and I think that caused other ripple effect of fracturing within his cabinet, and there was some people from both sides because he was kind of a mix, had noble backing and the people's representative, and people were not willing to defend some of his stuff that he was doing. So yeah, he used his final political ploy to uh, to stay as long as he could, and then when the actual voting was going to happen to make him be kicked out, and then he resigned. But that's just my
Yeah.
thoughts. That's my thoughts there. I don't know if you had anything additional or anything to it, but those are my kind of thoughts from.
No, and that's I appreciate you sharing that because I know you were in the kingdom, right, when this all went down and having conversations with people on the ground level. And it's I don't know the details, but when you just look from 10,000 feet, having so many ministries while being PM, not a good sign, right? Having
Trust issues.
one, having one to do that well takes a lot of time and energy.
Yeah, yeah,
Having multiple and being the PM on top of that, just not enough time. Even if you had, if you give someone the benefit of the doubt that they have all the skill sets and the knowledge to do all that work, you don't have enough time. That alone, the constraint
yes.
of time, like you're saying, traveling takes up a lot of time, right? And every time you travel, that's one of the challenges I face in my role. Traveling can just eat up so much time. And if you're, but you have to be at certain places for certain roles. So if you spend all your time traveling, then who's managing the day to day?
Yeah.
Who's taking care of the tasks that need to be taken care of and giving the direction to the team and building up the team? That takes time and energy.
No, and I was gonna add to it. Then you see, if you're gonna, and that's the thing, if you're gonna do that amount of traveling, then you got to make sure you have good CEOs or secretaries wherever they're at, because they're the
Mhm.
go-to person. And if they're not trickling that information of people's needs to you, you're not doing your job for that
Yeah.
portfolio or that ministry. So, yeah, nah, just to kind of add on to that.
Yeah. One of the things that really made a lot of waves, I think, on social media, on top of his resignation, was some of his comments that he made when he stepped away. One of
Mm,
them was an accusation that Tonga was no longer, or at least from his perspective, no longer a free nation, which really didn't. I think that also surprised a lot of people, and
yeah,
shocked them. And hey, Nuns Malo, he the Nunske says, Malo to was finally alive. I can
wow,
catch 100%. Great to have you, man. Appreciate it.
yeah, thank you.
So that was something that really people didn't understand, right? Like, what do you
Mm,
mean we're not a free people? Because I think I tried to find the video, but I couldn't find it. But he literally said that he thought that Tonga was free, but obviously from his perspective now Tonga isn't free. I didn't find
'cause-
that video, but I did find the Speaker of the House
mm,
interviewed on a podcast addressing that comment specifically, right?
okay,
Because
awesome.
that caught a lot of people's attention,
Off
right?
guard,
When you
right?
say, "Oh, Tonga is not free," what exactly does that mean, right? Like when
Yeah,
you're remember, he's still the head of the government, or at least the parliament. The king of
yeah,
Tonga is the head of the government, but he's the head of parliament, and the governing administration, and he says Tonga is not free. That's
yeah,
a pretty heavy accusation.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So let's watch um the Speaker of the House, which I went to elementary school with this gentleman, Lord Frapanua,
Is it
right
Tonga High?
now.
You went Tonga High, or this is more
Tonga Side School. This was in
Tonga
Tonga
Side School?
Side
Okay.
School. This is before, and then I think he went by the name Kinkinilao. Obviously, when you get the title, right, you take the name of the title. But we called him Kinkinilao growing up, and it's kind of interesting because we've been so far apart. My perspective of his personality and who he was from sixth grade
Hmm.
versus now, Speaker of the House, he's a lord. It's kind of interesting
Yeah.
to now it's a whole different perspective. But let's listen to the question and what the response was to that.
The former Prime Minister Honorable Hukaba Meliku addressed Parliament where he resigned. He mentioned that the member of Parliament who submitted the motion of no confidence against him were convinced by the Noble's representative. He also mentions that he thought this country was given freedom, but it seems there's still a hint of us not being really free. So his decision to resign is to allow the members of parliament to be free to vote. He also mentioned that the noble representative can band together. Why can't we, the people's representative, do the same and put aside our differences for the betterment of Tonga? This statement from the former prime minister is mentioned as we knew that he didn't have the numbers, because normally this is the case before the vote of no confidence and as we get ready to elect a new prime minister. They go around convincing members to vote in their favor. This is very normal. Yet, this is the statement made by the former prime minister. The question that I have, do you think that the former prime minister is correct in us not being really free? And this ties into another question from the public saying that the
Shit,
event
what kind of?
that means democracy in Tonga is working.
Interesting, right? I mean, that
Very
catches
interesting.
everybody's attention. When
Yeah,
the current prime minister, who's voted in, people voted for him, and obviously the nobles representative and the people's representative vote for the PM, for him to say we are not really free. Wow, that's a big accusation.
yeah. I think his true colors. If people know or involved in Tongan politics, his true colors of a Patoa, because he was a Patoa before he
Oh,
went
I didn't know
independent.
that. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. This is his true colors, and he was, he lost power, and then now he's back to what he was good at a blaming. So you know, his true colors just came out when you lose power. Then yeah, his true voice and colors came out. That's what I
Well, there's a
think.
couple things that to me that were kind of contradictory, right? Because he says it was no longer free because the nobles banded together, right? And then he said, why can't the people's representatives band together and put aside their differences? Wait a minute. You just split the country into
Yeah.
nobles and the people's representatives that, at least the people's representatives should have been unified to Fafepaki, to the nobles. And that is how you put aside your differences?
Yes. Well,
No,
and that's
that's not how you do that.
Tua. What does it sound like? It sounds like a Joe Biden. He's been the
Yeah.
leader of the country for 3.5 years, and then he's saying there's no unity and no free, and then he's the one been leading the country for the so many years. So the
His
thing is, my
administration.
question would be,
Yeah.
administration is like, then what were you doing? Maybe you were traveling too much that you weren't able to unify everybody, and that's the thing. It comes to his show, and that's the thing. I mean, like, it's like I
Well,
don't know
and then
how.
here's the funny thing. And going along on that thread, Masi, the left in the US also says if you vote for Donald Trump, you're going to destroy democracy. Wait a second. What? That doesn't make any sense. You're saying if I vote, which is democracy, if I vote for who I want to, and if I want him, that's how you destroy democracy. That's kind of like what he's saying. If you don't vote for me, then you're not really free.
Yeah, yeah,
Like some of this stuff doesn't make sense. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
very
Before
interesting.
we anything else, Masi, before we get into the speaker's answer.
No, I just give you what I thought when, in the very beginning when he took became prime minister. That I thought, man, this is not a good sign, and this was my own personal view. When the country was still in lockdown and he was still traveling to some of his business
Mm,
meetings, to me that was a telling sign what he thought of the people and what he thought of himself in that position. And he was doing that while Tonga and its people couldn't travel outside. So
yeah.
to me, I'm not surprised why this has happened. And you know what's crazy? He's the only prime minister of Tonga ever to resign, and that's gonna be his legacy that he resigned. And to me, when I saw that happen, I'm not surprised that when he was traveling, when the country was locked down, and this is the kind of person he is at the end. And I'm not surprised by that because I mean, we had Jacinda. Jacinda was pretty bad in New Zealand, but she was smart enough. She didn't travel out of New Zealand when the country was locked down. So at least Jacinda did something, and she stuck to it to
Yeah.
the end. And I was like, and then Siyashi Sowadeni, he locked the country, and he said he had a better excuse because he needed to go to some
So
important
you're telling me
country
he was like
country
Gavin
meeting.
Newsom in California,
I I
right?
think so. That's
And
a
all
good
the other mayors
comparison.
and governors who forced people to stay home and they went to fancy vacations and restaurants, right? Lockdown for
Yep.
thee, but
Yeah.
not for me.
Yes. Yes. And that was his kind of attitude.
That's a fair. I mean, that ended up being a shadow. Couple
Yeah.
comments here. Oh, Uncle Tua Malo. His comment is, I think
Mm,
Tevita Puloka will be the best man for the job. You familiar with Tevita Puloka? Malo
yeah.
Tua? I'm not
Devita
familiar with
Puloka.
him.
He. You know, I sat in the same table with him. He's a Blake. So for those who's a
Hmm.
Blake family, he came to the Blake reunion that was held here in New Zealand. Um, he was at the table and just kind of overheard some conversation he had with people on our table and stuff. And sounds like a good guy. And not only that, I went to school with his son, Didi Didi. So I don't really know him, but heard of him, and he's a good guy. But he's probably be close for the job. But if I had to put up my money on betting, I probably give it to Eke because he kind of submitted the vote of no confidence,
So
and
he seems
without
to be the
him,
leader of the
yes,
resistance.
he seems to be the leader. But Tipoloka, I wouldn't have any problem for him taking a job. But I don't know if you had any thoughts on that. Who do you think might get it? If you had to
I'm
if you're
too
a betting man,
disconnected.
who would you bet it on?
I would probably go whoever's leading the resistance, and if Isake Eke is the one leading it, then
Yeah,
he's probably, if you're the one gathering the votes for the no confidence, it would make sense you're the closest to gathering people to vote for you.
yeah.
Here's another comment. Regular Malo Clydemore.
Mm,
He says here, Malo Tautor Lava Mai, lovely pod with your dad. Tua,
mm.
yes, we
We
released
just talked
today
about it. Yeah.
a podcast with Devita Fade, released it. And I know a lot of the viewers and the listeners, you guys have been requesting Devita Fade to come back. He's been traveling. He was in
Hawaii.
Hawaii. He was in Tonga or New Zealand. Was he with you, Masi?
Earlier in the year, yeah.
Earlier in the year. So he's been, and then he just moved back to Hawaii with my mom. We've been trying to get him set up in Hawaii as well. He's also traveling again. He just came back to the mainland, and he'll be here for a couple weeks before he heads back to
Maybe we can
Hawaii.
do one more before he goes
Yes,
back or something.
we'll try and sneak one more, but appreciate it, Clyde Moore. Malo, malo.
Yeah.
All right. So pretty detailed context and a question. Let's see what our Speaker of Parliament response is. Did you see that? You see
Yeah.
the eyebrow? He's like, okay, all right.
Mm. First of all, everyone is free according to our constitution. It's pretty common knowledge that George Depo I emancipated the slaves, and all the Tongans are free to make their own decision.
I don't like the term slaves
Yeah.
because it wasn't. It's a nuance. It doesn't matter because I know the idea. What to
Yeah.
me, because we've read some of these books, they weren't slaves. They just didn't have rights to property, right?
Yeah.
Like they didn't own land, they didn't own property. So what are you forced to do? Well, you're forced to do work for the person who has land and property. But they were moving. Like there's a lot of accounts. The commoners, they didn't like, or they heard another chief is more friendly, more lenient, and gave them more opportunity. They would go to that chief and then go to another village. So yeah, I don't know why I didn't like that. I didn't like when you say slaves, though I understand, I agree. I guess I should just calm down to but
No, gotcha.
that's one thing that I would just maybe change a little bit. But We'll come back here. Sorry.
No, you're good. Good.
But your freedom cannot be, you cannot be so free that you impinge other people's freedoms. So there are guide rails around everyone's freedom. We're not free to just take our neighbor's property. We're not free to force people to do things they don't want to do. That's not freedom. Everyone has to have equal rights. And the fact that the Prime Minister feels like people are not free because apparently nobles and people's reps worked against him in a vote of no confidence. It doesn't really make any sense.
And he's touching on an important thing, right? There's a difference between tauataina and fighteriha. Just because you're the whatever, you can't fighteriha. You have tauataina. You're always, those are two different types of freedom. And that's what he's defining, right? Everyone, tauataina, everyone has tauataina. But not everyone has fighteriha. Nobody should have fighteriha.
Yeah, I feel bad because now Sovaleni and the Oxford and New Zealand University of Auckland have a bad reputation that they got their first alumni resigned from PM.
Yeah.
So
Well, and Tonga High School too, right?
Tonga High School,
too.
yeah.
You know, this
so,
is it's tough.
It's
Firstly, the former Prime Minister's government was only able to form a government with the support of the nobles.
See?
And if the nobles decide to withdraw their confidence, then that is the nobles exercising their freedom. And if the people's reps in the House decide to also withdraw their confidence from the former Prime Minister, that is their exercise of their freedom. So that freedom is also empowered by each member in the House who has a democratic mandate from their constituents. The nobles have their constituents, the people's reps have their constituents, and as elected members of the parliament, they all have the freedom to make their own decisions in the House. And whether you like it or not, you can't call that slavery or people not being free. That's the ultimate expression of freedom. The fact that we are free to elect our leader of government, and we are also free to show our lack of confidence in our leader of government. It's not. It doesn't bring any question to our democracy. In fact, it's the opposite. It ensures that people are confident that we have a working democracy, that we are still able to use the Constitution and abide by it according to the rules. So I would disagree with the Prime Minister on his point, the former Prime Minister, and reaffirm that it actually proves the opposite. The fact that we are going back to a ballot is very democratic.
Very interesting.
good answer.
Any comments on that?
No, good answer by the speaker. Very very detailed answer and explanation on that. But yeah, I think it's a good working. I mean, to me, if he didn't, there's a reason why he was put down. Everyone had their right if they had confidence in the leadership of Shashi Sovaleni, and obviously the first time they did, and then about a year after things changed, they did it. So I think that is fair and a good answer to that question from the Speaker of the House, Fafonua. But yeah, I did thought when the question was asked to him, I did think it was a little bit too long. His question to ask anything that we could have made it fair, but that's all. But it was all good.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had anything, Tua, anything
Mhm.
maybe he could have added Lord Whakafanua, or you thought he gave a pretty good answer?
I think he gave a very good answer. Obviously, you look. I'm just gonna give some thoughts on how he responded. Very measured, very thoughtful, and relatively precise. Like
Hmm.
I was impressed with the way he answered it. Right, I
Nice.
think was obviously pushing back on the former prime minister, but in a very professional, right, very proper way, and was pretty clear on his position. So it was interesting. Here's a comment here from Clyde Moore. Is his accent from La Kepa or London? It's La Kepdon. And yeah, I don't know is if if I remember correctly, when he left Tonga when we were in 6th grade, I can't remember if he went to New Zealand. Maybe he went to England, but he went overseas for his education. So
Mm.
that's where probably that accent comes from. Bang in there on his
Yeah.
response to yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciated it. I think it's good. Really was kind of disappointed with that comment by the PM because I think it damaged him more than what he thought it would damage the government or his opposition. I think it was a smart move to step down. You'd
Mhm.
rather be the first PM to step down than to be the first PM removed for no
And
confidence.
and that was the political calculation he made when he knew the speaker was gonna carry on forward with the vote. So hey, good on him maneuvering that. You got to pick which way to die. So he chose the one on the
The
arm instead
samurai,
of the
yeah, he's
yeah. But
Mm.
I did think Tua when I was thinking about this when this was happening and I was in Tonga, I was thinking he probably I don't know. I think the PM because that's kind of heavy comments he made, and I'm thinking I wouldn't be surprised after he's done with this term because he'll still be an MP for Tonga Taputolu. Uh, I wouldn't be surprised after this he doesn't run and then he goes overseas for a little bit, for a little bit with work and stuff. Because I don't know how you can keep going around Tonga and stuff and have such a heavy. He did clarify and kind of walk back. I think there was a post, but I don't know how you can make those kind of comments and then still be around Tonga. But I don't know. That's just my
What,
personal.
what what are you suggesting, Masi? He put himself in isolation?
maybe, maybe, maybe. So I don't know. I don't know why you do
Go.
that kind of harsh comment, and then still stick around after you're done with your term. But we'll see.
Alusha
We'll see. I could
Nagi,
be
Eva
wrong.
Gimuri. Eva Gimuri,
Mm,
run away Simba and never return.
yeah, yeah. Saya. Tonga will move on.
Yahweh. Yes. One more thing before we jump into the Kamehameha video here. Let me bring this back up to the stage. Just a quick update, and I think Clyde Moore might like this, and also many of the viewers, is Tonga's moved up in the rankings for rugby league. So that's one. So that's cool. We're number 4. I think it goes Australia, New Zealand, England, then Tonga. So that's interesting.
What was Tonga's previous ranking before that tournament?
I think we were like 5th.
We
So I
only
think
went one spot.
one spot up because it was Hotmoa. Hotmoa was above us,
Okay.
right? Because I'm trying to think who else could have been up there. I could be wrong, but I think it's just moved up one spot from
Okay.
5th to 4th.
I just thought we should be number 3 after beating New Zealand
Well,
twice.
that's the thing. I would have thought so too, because but I don't know. Maybe they
Okay.
just, you know what? They should put us number 2 just for some of these stats right here, right? So it says here, the Pacific Cup final at Combank Stadium, crowd attendance 28,728. Biggest crowd attendance for a test in Sydney since 2008. You notice it doesn't say rugby league, it just says test. So that means, and the others, the data is going to back that up even further. So since 2008, this has been the largest test at that location, right? Attendance.
Okay.
Next, Suncorp test crowd attendance of 33,196 with viewer reach of over 1.5 million. Here's
Okay.
where it gets interesting. Highest views in 23 and 24 for International Rugby Union and League matches. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I said, man. I'm like, what?
So the Wallabies are not holding their weight in
No,
Australia.
the
Tonga
Wallabies.
Tonga is taking it
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only thing that probably beats these numbers is state of origin and maybe some NRL games,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, 'cause
But
state of origin I mean, it has better numbers than all of the international rugby tests, right? The state of
yeah,
origin is like okay,
it's
it's like
a
the
yeah,
big deal.
that's like the number one, usually number one, number two. I remember watching reading an article like 5-6 years ago, and like Australia top model had more viewers than like the Bledisloe Cup in Australia,
Okay. Okay.
right? So I mean,
Okay.
rugby union, that's why they're trying to steal some more of the rugby league players, bring some star power. Really, they Rugby Australia has never really recovered
Since Israel
from
Folau,
Israel
Saga.
Folau. They're still trying to recover from that, and then the whole political stance that they took. So I mean, here this is mind-boggling to me. I mean,
Yeah.
this is, we did discuss this previously, like, oh man, it's pretty good, but these new numbers are coming out. It's pushed it even higher, right?
Yep, and it's come to a boiling point now, Tua, because this was we saw the trajectory of this since the 2017 when the World Cup, Rugby League World Cup,
Hmm.
happened because of the interest and allegiance of Taumalolo and Fifita to Tonga. And we saw this, and now it's coming, and it probably,
Yep.
it's not even the boiling point. It's probably going to go further than this. This is just going to keep going, and just gather more interest
No, and
and
the reason why I
winning health.
believe that really to a high level, Masi, is because the younger Polynesian players have continued, right?
Yes, that's
All
true. Yep.
these Isaiah Katoa, you have uh what's his name? Shoot, the big guy, really big guy,
Hamole
Mole.
Kolokauatu. Yeah,
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 he's there, and these are young guys. These are guys they haven't even. We're always talking about, oh man, it'd be nice to have them at their peak. These guys haven't peaked yet. They're still climbing, right? And this is really young talent, young generation. So you're looking at Polynesian League talent on the international level for another 6 to 10 years, right?
nice,
And they're
nice.
attracted, and in some of the interviews I've seen online, it's not just happening on the international level for Mate Tonga at the highest level. The junior teams, I'm hearing that like some of the Polynesian kids in the junior levels
Yeah,
are defecting to Mate Tonga
that's
at
I
the
believe
at the
that.
younger levels. So this is huge. This is going to be sustained for many years.
Yeah. No, and I now attest to that too because the teams, the I think the under 16 teams, even here in New Zealand, with the Mate Tonga team, the teams are so big that they had that the Tonga team has like two teams, two sets of
Yeah,
teams, like a Tonga A and a Tonga B, because they have so many kids who want to play for Mate Tonga, and because of the brand that these young guys are kind of following in the footsteps of Taumalolo and Fifita. So pretty cool. So you're
yeah,
right, absolutely right on that because I see it here in New Zealand.
yeah, which is pretty awesome. Here's another one. The Pacific Cup final between Australia and Tonga drew over 1 million viewers, a 79% increase on the 2023 decider between the Kangaroo and Kiwis. That is mind boggling. 79%. I hope we should be getting more money than what we typically settle for in the past.
Yeah,
This is staggering.
yeah, and hopefully this allows, like when people want to see good new teams that are competing evenly, people are gonna come watch. Non-Tongans or non-Australians, people are gonna watch the product. So hopefully this is a good indicator that we can have like a Pacific origin while
Yeah.
concurrently that the state of origin happens, because like I said, people are gonna watch good rugby league, man, and that's gonna draw numbers, and that will be exciting to go along with the state of origin. If they put as much time and effort, the Pacific origin can be really big. And then now that the NRL has a team in, Papua New Guinea, that's only going to elevate
Yeah.
that team and that country. And then we can have like a Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, and Papua
Papua.
New Guinea
Yeah.
as a Pacific origin or something, or just have a series or something. But we got to have something that goes concurrently with the that runs concurrently with the state of origin. But yeah, I
Dude,
don't
and
know.
that's something that I hope the NRL captures, because the NRL doesn't even need International Rugby League to do a Pacific Island state of origin, right? Where you can have Polynesian versus Melanesian, where you can have the not just the Fijian and the Papua, but also the Aborigines in Australia, right? Have a
Yeah,
Melanesian
yeah,
really strong
yeah,
team there. The Tonga,
yeah.
Samoa, Cook Islands, right? Niue, they put together a Polynesian. Dude,
Ooh,
that's
that would
high
be
caliber. Those are two high
Melanesia versus
caliber teams.
Polynesia.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
And then after that, have the winner of the Pacific one go against the New
Winner of
South
the
Wales and Queensland. Oh, dude, that would be awesome.
that would
That would be
that
awesome.
would that would definitely grow the game of
Yeah,
rugby league.
100%. So yeah, that was something we had in there. I thought, hey man, that just came out. Thought that would be good to kind of bring and discuss real quick on the program.
Nice.
Anything else to add to that, Mussy?
Any updates with Wolf stepping down yet, and us looking for a new Madema Tonga head coach? I haven't heard anything. It's kind of gone dead silent, but I know he did mention he was gonna step down. I hope he does, and we find another coach
You know what?
as soon as possible.
I should have
But
known better. I should have known better, Mussy, that should have been something I brought up, because I should have known that was something that would be top on mind for you. So I haven't seen anything online. There's
okay.
two rumors that I've heard. One, they're gonna try and bring Wolfie back.
Oh my!
That's
Who's
one of the
who's trying to
rumors.
bring him back?
I just seen some like people talking, saying that they believe that that they can bring back Wolfie in time. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. The other
Here's
one
my.
was, go ahead.
And I was gonna say too. Like that kick we won by 1 point, right? That was all that got. Was that Katoa?
Katoa.
Isaiah Katoa.
Yeah,
That was all him. There was no coaching skill on trying to put him. There was nothing. If there was any blame, it's blame on Christian Wolf that we weren't able to maintain the lead, that it got that close. That's a
hmm
coach. To me, that's a coaching issue. It's the same thing with the Australian or the English game versus Matimatong in the quarterfinals. The team started so slow, and that miracle of coming back, and we should have won that game.
that should have been
But
a try
that's
with
all, that
Fifita.
was all players. That was no coaching skill on trying to place them or whatever. That was literally the players' God-given ability to make that happen. I didn't see I didn't see Christian Wolf do anything. To me, he already lost it when he had that World Cup, and then he lost that last one. Was pretty evident. Was
That was
kind of
kind of a letdown. I can't argue with that.
yeah. So
And
to me,
especially, yeah,
yeah, that's to me. To me, I just see it as more of God-given abilities from the Matema Tonga players for winning those really close ones, and that's kind of projected Matema Tonga to be kind of a top brand. And to me, the next step is to get a coach that really can help us sustain and what it's like to keep winning instead of always malope malohi. Because I
yeah,
think we're pretty right. We Tonga cannot be the team that say, oh, we win, we'll keep it close, but we'll only win occasionally. We're already up there because we already have the talent, and it's only going to get better to have the coach, and it's more of the mental and the ability to get used to winning, because
yeah.
it's different being the underdog all the time, and then that kind of gives you motivation to kind of win games. But it's a different motivation when you're the champion
And you're
and
the
always trying
target.
to sustain.
People
You're
are,
the
yeah.
target trying to win. To me, that's the next elevation, and I hope we can make the right choice for the head coach. Because
Yeah.
my opinion, Mate Matonga is an attractive position to coach. In my
Yeah,
opinion.
it's a tier 1 nation now for all
Yeah.
intents and purposes. Right?
What was your
Just off
second
the
one?
talent.
Yeah. What was your
The
second one?
second one was what's the Johns? The guy who played
Twin?
for
Something?
No, there were two brothers that played in the NRL. He's the guy that coaches the Blues, New South Wales Blues sometimes. So he was an assistant coach one time with the Mate Tonga.
Okay.
And I saw someone put up a video of when he took that assistant coach position for a little bit and was helping Mate Tonga, and how he spoke positively of how he felt Tonga could contribute. So there's some rumors that he may be targeted for that spot. Andrew Johns, there we go. Thank you, Clyde Moore. Andrew Johns.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay. Hey,
yeah.
I'm good with anybody. Anybody that can give us sustained success instead of we've
Mhm.
already graduated. And I'm grateful for Wolf because he made us the underdog. He was able to recruit, and like I said, and that happens in America. There's great recruiters, but not always good coaches to kind of propel the team. But he's done his job, and he's elevated Tonga to the furthest he can. But right now, it's the next level up of sustained winning, and I think that's
Yeah,
what
and
Tonga's
I think he's kind of sees that so far at this stage. And I also think he knows he needs to establish himself at the NRL level. So I think that's also the reason why he's drawing back a bit. He's like, man, I got a new expansion franchise, has a lot of talent. It's going to require all of his focus to
time
get a win,
preparation.
because he's had multiple wins in the Super League, but everybody knows Super League is like the redheaded stepchild of the NRL. And so he's got to focus, and he gets an NRL win, then he's kind of elevated himself to top tier coaching.
Yeah. I agree.
So 10-4. So the last segment for the evening is we're going to react to a documentary made by a content person online on Kamehameha the First, and how he united the Hawaiian Islands, and kind of the history for Hawaii and bringing that to the table. We've kind of done a little bit of Fijian documentary and some history. We've done some Tahiti, Tapu Tapu Atea short documentary on that. And then obviously Samoa Tonga. We've even looked at some videos for Futuna and Uvea. So this one is we're going to react to it, just watch through it and give some reactions to it, and close out the show with this segment.
Nice.
All right, let's get rolling.
A great disturbance had come over the kingdom. A boy of very noble blood had been born, and the mystic seers counseled the king that the child would become a killer of chiefs, who would rule the whole of this island called Hawaii. So King Alapa'i sent out assassins to kill the child. But the boy's mother was a cunning chiefess, and she had arranged for him to be raised by another family in hiding. For 5 years, the boy eluded this death sentence, until the king welcomed him back to court. He grew tall and powerful and brooding. He bore the godly mark of prophecy, and he was called Kamehameha, which meant the lonely one. King Kalaniʻopuʻu had taken the throne sometime after the death of Alapa'i, but now he was dying and the matter of succession was at hand. There were jealous chiefs vying for lands, and hardly 3 years had passed since white men first visited these shores. The finest leader to succeed him was his strong nephew, Kamehameha, but the king intended to leave the throne to his eldest son, Kiwala'o, and merely granted some land to Kamehameha and designated him keeper of Ku, the war god. The religion of these islands had descended from that of the famed Polynesian explorers, who centuries before discovered and settled the archipelago. Soon blossomed among the people the essence of aloha, a blissful force manifested in kindness and familial love. And they cultivated a love for the land, from the coral beds flecked with brilliant creatures to the tall and sleeping rims of volcanoes. The gods had suffused this world with mana, a spiritual energy that permeated all things in prayers and people. But mana was not evenly distributed. Those of noble blood possessed it in great quantities, and so kings and chiefs claimed the right to issue kapu, spiritual codes of conduct. Kapu demanded commoners lower their heads before chiefs and stipulated that women could not dine with men.
Something real quick, Masi.
Mm.
I don't know if it's just like part of the legend as it grows, but a lot of these relatively important figures, not just in Polynesian history, but just in history in general, always have like this weird element of foreboding bad luck or future that they try to kill it as a child, right? Then they
Mm.
have to survive. Like you look at Moses, you look at Tupo the first,
Yeah.
right? Tupo the
Yeah.
first had like same thing. They tried to kill him when he was young. They also tried to, he was also very sickly. His mom had to
Mhm.
run away with him and hide him, and he
Yeah.
grew up. And then, same thing with
Kamehameha.
Kamehameha, or according to our buddy there, Lolo, at Kawa University, would be
Kamehameha.
Kamehameha, which would make sense, like Tama, like the lonely
Yeah.
one, right?
Mm.
Tama. Um, so that to me is kind of an interesting. You see this theme everywhere, and then also this. I've been listening to some of the Hawaiian historians. They
Uh-huh.
named this individual that brings the kapu system, which is the tapu, right?
Yep.
That seems to be something tied to other Polynesian culture. They said that before this chief, many centuries before the 1700s, I think they want to say like 14 or 1500s,
Okay.
brings this new system
Yeah.
with the kapu system. I wonder how much that relates to the expansion of the Polynesian Empire, and obviously kapu meaning the kingly, the hierarchy of people, bringing this kapu system to Hawaii. It'd be interesting to maybe one day find more information on and review who these people were that brought this new system to Hawaii.
Yeah. No, very interesting. And isn't it pretty I know there's names of the big islands of the Samoa archipelago, with Savai'i having, right, the Samoa's having Savai'i, the big island, reference to
Mhm.
Vaihi, which is
Yeah,
kind of like the very far away land, and then the big island of Hawaii, which is Vaihi Savai'i, just another name, being kind of where the Tuitonga kind of lived in Savai'i, and then looks like the prominent Kamehameha born into a very prominent family in the Big Island.
on Big
That
Island.
probably Big Island, that's Vaihi, that kind of took over all of Hawaii, and that and I think the Big Island was probably known as, and I think that's why he was able to kind of learn at a very young age these political maneuvers and these
Mhm.
political, um, you know, political motives of other people to try to centralize power, because this is my opinion, and maybe people who are maybe more further um, maybe well known in Hawaiian history, but it seems like the Big Island of Hawaii was where the prominent high chiefs kind of dwelled compared to the other
Mm.
islands. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't know. Could be, because to me, of course, bigger land, but it looks like he was able to gather a significant amount of forces, and also because he was well versed in political encounters within his own island, he was able to negotiate and work with Westerners that came over, and he was utilizing some of their assistance and weaponry to kind of assist in his campaign of taking over the islands. But I could be wrong in Hawaii probably being the most highest chiefs, and they're probably the most high chiefs that lived in the island, because maybe it was the political authority for many, for many of the other islands compared to Oahu or Maui. Because I know there is that discussion, maybe Oahu and Maui, because there's maybe the Menehune. There's the
Mhm.
stories of them kind of being like the first arrival kind of people. Maybe they were dwelling in those other islands, but maybe significant presence in the Big Island was Polynesians. I don't know that when they first came there. I don't
Yeah,
know, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud there, because I don't find it I don't find it like a coincidence. Just like the Purimele was built in Sabai, kind of like Sabai being the maybe for that era the political authority during
was
that
there.
time, and I feel like maybe Big Island, because probably a lot of the high chiefs and high-ranking Polynesians that went settle Hawaii kind of settled in the Big Island of Hawaii, and that's why I'm not surprised that Kamehameha was sprung out of that time in the Big Island and not any other island. That's just me thinking out loud, but I don't know if you
No,
had anything to add or anything to it.
yeah,
But
I mean they seem to have a pretty strong oral history of
mm,
there were already people on Hawaii. Then this group comes in with a new political and social structure and establishes that, right? And that's what Kamehameha is coming up with, that whole kapu system. The other thing, just as a parallel, just like Tupo the First is very sickly. He gets cured by the high priest of the Tuitonga and grows up in Mu'a, where
yeah,
he sees all the political, cultural stuff, just like Kamehameha here. It's interesting parallels. Another interesting thing is also in William Mariner's book, Kona, which is on Big Island,
yep,
would be Tonga or Tona,
Dawn,
which and it's
yep.
on the southern part of Big Island. So a lot of very interesting parallels there, and as you said, references to Vaihi. All right, we'll jump back into it.
Nor could women consume the divine foods of pork, bananas, or coconuts. The punishment for breaking the kapu was death, and from the bones of those sacrificed or otherwise slain, one could reap the mana of their enemies. Now denied his place on the throne, Kamehameha defied the king. He sacrificed a rebellious noble and took the mana for himself. Kalaniʻopuʻu was dead, and his furious, disinherited son Keua attacked Kamehameha's lands, killed some of his people, and offered their bodies in sacrifice to his half-brother, the new king, Kiwalao. Kamehameha rallied his chiefs for war. Warriors clashed with jagged clubs and barbed spears, and on the battlefield, King Kiwalao was struck down by a stone. One of Kamehameha's warriors fell on him with a sharp-toothed dagger and slashed his throat. Kamehameha now reigned over half of the island. Keua fled south, swearing vengeance, and for years he and the other chiefs would bitterly contain Kamehameha's attempts at further expansion. The battle lines held firm. Something was needed to break them.
Hey everybody, Lee Livesey
8 years
here,
later now.
introducing an awesome
A
bait
what?
from Six Sense
I
Fishing
said
that I'm
8
super
years later
excited
because they
about.
said that they projected that event happened in 1782, and now it's 1790.
Yeah.
The date.
Well, and the interesting thing. Sorry, I didn't take off the sound on there, but now that
No, you're
we can add this back, there's another thing that was very interesting to me is around this time you have Abraham Lincoln earlier in well, this is the 1700s, right? So you're
Yeah.
getting ready to come into Abraham Lincoln. You're getting ready to have Tupo the First come in within another 50 years or so. But it's kind of
Mhm.
interesting to see all these guys around the same time coming in when they establish new order, new ways of government.
Mm.
And it's kind of interesting that you see that across the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see here.
Simon Metcalf cruised off the island of Maui in search of vengeance. Some of the native people had killed one of his crew in retaliation for Captain Metcalf's flogging of a noble chief for a perceived insult. And so now the American trader laid anchor at the village of Oluwalu, warmly called out to trade, and when 100 unarmed men and women paddled out with fruits and flowers, gave the order to bury them in cannon fire. Metcalf then fled the screaming bay. He had come to the islands to rendezvous with his son Thomas, who soon arrived in his own vessel to trade on Hawaii, ignorant of the deeds of his father. Hawaiians captured the ship, forced the crew overboard, and then beat them to death with paddles. They spared only one Isaac Davis for his brave spirit, and together with a captured member of the elder Metcalf's crew, John Young, they went before King Kamehameha. The king calmly offered the two prisoners a choice. They could be killed, or he could lavish them with houses and sumptuous feasts and several beautiful wives, on the condition that they remain in his service, as advisors who would train his soldiers to use the muskets and cannons from the captured ship. Young and Davis served him well thereafter and brokered trade with America.
What does that sound like? Sounds like Ulukalala and Mariner.
Sounds like a Ulukalala kind of thought right there.
Yeah, see new technology. I've been struggling to make grounds on my enemies and establishing control. Then all of a sudden it's like, hey, here's a couple guys that can help me with my efforts. Have them join me. See if they can turn the tide.
What did it show that the cannons? So they said the Kamehameha's people and warriors came to give food to the boat, but the boat shot back with cannons, and then that's what preempted them to attack the ship. And
yes, so there were two trading ships. The first one was the I guess a father and a son were the captains. It sounds like the father first comes, he gets upset for an insult to one of his people, one of his officers. So while they're going by in Maui, it sounds like, or maybe it was Big Island, the people come out to trade and they shoot the cannons and then they leave. The son comes, and the son was supposed to meet the dad in Hawaii. The son comes, the Hawaiians come in and they realize, oh, these people on these same kind of ships, they killed us last time. The son comes and they kill everybody except for those two guys.
Okay.
Because of what the father did. Because the son didn't know that his dad just like slaughtered the Hawaiians.
Slaughtered people, yeah. Okay.
American and British ships, which had begun to frequent the islands in recent years. One trusted member of the king's court, Kaiana, had even visited China and America. Trade granted Kamehameha precisely what he wanted, hordes of guns and cannons to turn against his enemies. For the great Kahekili ruled Maui, and he had slaughtered many in his conquest of Oahu, and there he lived in a house built from the bones of the chiefs who defied him. The man was...
That's pretty intense. So Kahekili, he kills his people and he builds a house out of their bones. That's pretty dark, man.
He's a warrior spirit man. Gotta live with his enemy's bones,
Yeah, he's like, dude, I'm getting all the mana. Yeah, mana's gonna be with me night and day.
Was rumored to be the true father of Kamehameha, but it mattered not.
What? I didn't know that.
Okay.
That Kahekili is rumored that Kahekili was the dad of Kamehameha. They didn't have. Too bad we didn't have DNA tests back then. Verified. Put them on Jerry Springer in Maui and verify.
Who's the father?
Who's the father?
Of Kamehameha.
Kamehameha invaded Maui and battled against Kahekili's son, Kalani Kupule. Young and Davis manned the cannons, and the Hawaiians killed so many that the river became dammed red with bodies. But Kamehameha did not conquer Maui then. In his absence, his old enemy Keua had burned through his kingdom on Hawaii. Kamehameha returned with his devastating gunners and forced Keua's army to retreat south into the terrible Ashlands. There, a volcano erupted, and a storm of subterranean poison killed hundreds of Keua's men. The elation of victory proved fleeting. Armed with his own guns, Kahekili mounted a coalition of the islands against Kamehameha. His invasion fleet ravaged the sacred temples along the northern shores of Hawaii. Kamehameha met them on the seas, and with muskets and cannons, his men splintered and scattered the invaders. This island could not remain so divided. Kamehameha invited Keua to make peace, and the exhausted rebel came forth in a canoe. Above loomed the king's new lava stone temple atop the Hill of the Whale, and on the shoreline stood Kamehameha and his warriors. Keua could not trust it. He began to cut his own flesh so as to render himself unfit for sacrifice, but the king called out to reassure him. "Rise and come here, that we may know each other." So Keua approached, and when he stepped onto the
What I think is interesting here, rise and come here that we may know each other. Fe'iloaki. Ilo. How get the fe'iloaki? And ilo is to know. How come? So that we can know each other. That is almost a literal translation of fe'iloaki.
Yeah, no, exactly, Tuan. Exactly.
And you remember, this is in Tonga, there's civil war, right? The Tongan Empire has denigrated to the point that all the little island groups that have been isolated, everything is falling apart. It's falling into chaos because the empire has just the civil war back in Tonga. There's no more structure. There's no more order to enforce the quote unquote kapu system. So all these little families who were allegiant and were put in check by the overall leadership of the Polynesian Empire, now they're all feuding with each other for power.
Because what's the estimate? Because we're kind of saying about early 1700s, right? When the
Yes, this is 1790 plus.
Yeah, see, and the Tui Tonga started losing influence in that early mid 1700s, right? So that's why things are just everyone is kind of going for themselves with their little
power
kingdom.
Struggle.
Power struggle.
Yep. Beach, Kamehameha and his men killed him and all of his party. The king took their corpses up to the temple, melted their flesh from their bones, and harvested their mana. Thus, Kamehameha ruled supreme over the island of Hawaii. Kahekili died in 1794, succeeded by his son Kalani Kupule on Oahu, who then conquered Maui and attempted to steal British trade ships for his fleet. Kamehameha did not intend to make enemies of the outsiders. After deftly courting an alliance with British diplomats, he sent out an army of 10,000 warriors. They overran Maui and then proceeded to swarm the hills of Oahu, where they clashed with defenders under the command of a traitor to Kamehameha, Kaiana. They shot a cannonball through him, and the Oahu forces fell back to their camp on the cliffed overlook of Nu'uanupali. Then came the blare of war shells and the wrath of Kamehameha's warriors, who scaled the mountain, shooting and lancing all in their path, until at last the army of Oahu became trapped between their jagged spears in a 1,000-foot drop to the valley below. The men of Kamehameha slew many where they stood, and hundreds more they forced over the precipice.
That's crazy.
The Pali lookout.
The valley became covered in a sheet of mangled flesh, and the Hawaiians went to behead all of the dead so that their mana would pass to Kamehameha. The body of Kalani Kupule was not among them. Months later, they found him wounded in the mountains, dragged him before Kamehameha at the Hill of the Whale, and sacrificed him.
This is the thing that, not trying to excuse some of the atrocities that happen in colonization and all that other stuff. But this goes to show we were pretty brutal amongst ourselves, right? We killed each other. We exercised power over each other. This is why I think getting overly caught up with quote unquote colonization and how bad it was. I'm saying, yes, there were bad things. This is pretty tough too. I mean, how is this not colonization? People didn't line up and say, Kamehameha, please be my king. He's like, dude.
Yeah. Kamehameha, stay in your own region. Why you gotta come to our region?
Yeah.
Or come to our island, Like, no, it's like, it's just,
it's human, it's
because
life.
It's human nature, especially when you deal with prominent people who want power. It doesn't matter with what skin color, it's gonna happen.
Yeah. See, and that's the thing. That's why I think one of the dangers of getting caught up in that whole thing is like, I'm telling you, your ancestors killed people and people killed your ancestors. It was just the way life was before. We're pretty fortunate now in our lifetime. We live in we're really blessed, man. We lived in a fairly peaceful time, and look for the positive. Move on. If we try to stick to who wronged me 2,000 years ago, everyone's been wronged at some point. Everyone's family has been oppressed. Everyone's family have been oppressors. So we just try to make the best choices now and move forward. So, I mean, I don't hear people, like you were saying, nobody here comes and complains about Kamehameha's colonization. But that's just the way it was. I mean, anyways, I thought that was something interesting to note there.
All of the islands now answered to Kamehameha, all except Kauai and its adjacent island of Ni'ihau. Kamehameha launched an invasion of Kauai, but the fleet was thrown into a howling tempest. It was said that some of the survivors made it to the shores of Kauai, where fierce warriors captured and sacrificed them. Hawaiian warfare had long been absolute, no quarter given to civilians. One boy recalled watching Kamehameha's marauders overrun his village and kill his parents. When the boy attempted to escape with his 3-month-old brother, they speared the infant. But now Kamehameha was presented with a group of civilians who had years before defended their village by breaking a paddle over his head. The king pardoned them and declared the law of the splintered paddle. See to it that our aged, our women, and our children lie down to sleep by the roadside without fear of harm.
I actually heard an interesting, I watched a video of the broken paddle. Supposedly, the reason why Kamehameha has this change of heart, because look at what he did to his cousin, right? And then kills him and takes his mana. So this is a guy who is like pretty ruthless. People are ruthless towards him. But apparently he gets stuck. If I remember the story correctly, he somehow gets stuck or isolated from his men they were on a ship, and his foot gets stuck in the reef or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have been killed by some people, and they had a paddle with them and they didn't kill him. And so that's where the broken paddle rule, where he says, like, because of that gesture of like kindness towards him, he then does this reform, like, hey, okay, guys, let's just not kill women and children anymore. Let's let them sleep in peace. But if you want to go to war, you go to war. But there is if I remember correctly, there's a story of how Kamehameha could have been killed, but ended up being saved by whoever. And that allows him to have a change of heart, if I remember correctly.
Change of policy.
He was able to convince enough people of the Hawaiian Parliament not to give him a vote of no confidence. So he said, since you guys gave me a vote of confidence and didn't remove me, I'm going to establish a new law that will allow us to be a little more forgiving.
Hey, Tua, regarding that story, was that during his campaign in Hawaii, or in Oahu or Maui? during that kind of saga where his foot got stuck in the reef.
It
and
was,
he couldn't,
I want to say Oahu, but I don't remember which island it was, but it was one of the outer islands while he was kind of expanding, because somehow, some way he got isolated, and it was him and another guy. The other guy got killed and died, but he was not killed, and they ended up rescuing him. But the individual could have killed him, or two people, I think it was 2 or 3 people could have killed him, but they didn't. And that's where the law of the broken paddle he establishes after that, because of the kindness that he was given.
Non-combatants would thereafter be protected by his sacred kapu. Under him, the old chiefs had abandoned their incessant warring, and the king preserved alliances with dozens of strategic marriages, including one to the 12-year-old Keopuolani, the exalted daughter of his slain enemy, Kiwala'o. And so the people of the islands paid tribute and worked the fruitful land and fished on shorelines more serene and quiet than in centuries past. Years of prosperity could not, however, placate the king's desire to rule Kauai. The island boasted a new king, Kaumoali'i. As he prepared to invade, Kamehameha's armies were struck by a vile and deadly pestilence, likely cholera. It seemed a punishment from the gods. 3 men were accused of eating foods forbidden under the kapu, so Kamehameha had their eyes torn from their skulls and their limbs snapped, and then he sacrificed them.
When I first got this, I expected it to just kind of taste gross.
Interesting. So it took a while for him before he kind of got to Kauai. Yeah?
To Kauai. That was the last one, the very last one. And I think, we'll see, but if my memory corrects me, I think he ends up just marrying into that. So I don't know if he actually invades Kauai, but we'll find out here.
Okay.
Poto ito iya Kauai mal.
Save the bloodshed.
1810, the king prepared for a renewed assault on Kauai, but first sent a letter to a distant monarch, King George III. His putative ally, the British crown, was facing the might of Napoleon Bonaparte, and Kamehameha leveraged this. I'm sorry to hear you're being at war with so many powers, and I, so far off, cannot assist you. Should any of the powers which you are at war with molest me, I shall expect your protection. Kamehameha requested a ship and brass guns, and sent His Majesty a sacred feather cloak.
Very interesting. So he recognizes the significance of alliances, and how to leverage. So very early on, he's understanding. He's already seeing, I pretty much have Hawaii, and I'll consolidate Hawaii, but there are bigger fish in the world that I got to worry about after I consolidate Hawaii. Yeah. Right. So kind of interesting how forth thinking he is.
No, and the advanced thinking of leveraging even the British and the French power, so he can get what he wanted, because he's asking for a shipment of guns, right, to come to him to kind of assist with his still campaign, because he's still working towards Kauai, and he was able to get that because obviously the French were stopping in Hawaii for trade and stuff. So that's when you can only develop these. You can only develop these thinking and strategic thinking actually just from prominent families and political families, because this is way beyond than your typical, ordinary person that's kind of living and kind of farming around their areas. So, yeah.
No, 100%. And Kamehameha seems to be a pretty shrewd guy.
Yeah.
Kamehameha had grown in reach, power, and wealth. He would soon force the commoners into the mountains to harvest sandalwood, to be traded to Americans to sell in China for the profit of Kamehameha and his chiefs. Kaumoali'i beheld this powerful kingdom, which seemed poised to massacre Kauai. He surrendered, and Kamehameha, now king of the unified islands, intended to honor him with a feast. There, Isaac Davis warned Kaumoali'i that a few traitorous chiefs were plotting to poison him. Kaumoali'i escaped, and the chiefs poisoned Davis instead. Saddened by this loss, the king had also erred in his pursuit of riches. Forced from their farms to harvest sandalwood, the people began to starve, so the king reversed his command and invested in the production of food. If Kamehameha was a warrior capable of great atrocity against those in his path, he had also become a measured king,
Maria.
bound by the gods to his people. His many wives and children came to his side when he fell ill in 1819. In the coming years, his most favored wife, Ka'ahumanu, would advise his successor to abolish the kapu system, and with it the sacrifices, rampant capital punishment, and restrictions that had long precluded women from dining with men and accessing high political arenas. The kings and queens would fell the statues to the old gods and adopt the Christianity of American missionaries, who would settle the islands with foreign traders and investors, many of whom...
I have a thought that just came through.
What's up? What's up?
So a lot of people say that group, some people say that group that came to Hawaii and established the kapu system and all that stuff. Some of them, some people say those were people from Ha'amoa, right? One of the things that I think is interesting, the kapu system here really diminishes the matriarchal role in politics, right? Which doesn't fit the typical Samoan approach to politics and structure, right? Because you have women playing a much more prominent role. And this kapu system seems to reflect more of the Tongan structure and approach, right? Where it's a patriarchal rule and authority, in
especially
politics.
political campaigns were mostly by men, kind of thing. The women kind of only had their social influence in the social family kind of environment, but like for political of your kind of region on how to politically establish your authority and and military campaign makes sense. It could be a tapu kind of focus or influence of that system.
Yeah, I mean, just an observation there. And then also, see, the women are influential, but in the social aspect, which is what's being shown here, Kamehameha has all the political and the military power, but in in that sense, but who has more influence in the social? It's the women. Here's the wife coming to the husband and saying, hey, we should probably abolish the kapu system and all this other stuff. So I just thought that was interesting, just something to consider when we compare and contrast the different approaches to politics and military power, and in regards to what we see here with Kamehameha, which is highly documented that this was a system that was injected into Hawaiian culture, 1500s or so, which would have been at the height of the Tuitonga Empire.
Yep.
Whom trafficked in disease in their own perfidious designs upon the islands. Yet among the people would always survive the ancient songs and ceremonies and the warm spirit of aloha. And for now, King Kamehameha died in an age of peace, having fulfilled a prophecy, and all of the islands stood united under the kingdom of Hawaii. So the history dose are
very interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, any kind of general thoughts there, Mussy, on Kamehameha the First, right? Basically the unifier of the Hawaiian Islands.
He's kind of dubbed the name as Kamehameha the Great because he did, that's not an easy campaign, and wasn't easy because probably he was very ruthless and brutal. I kind of studied this back in high school, but I didn't know, watching this documentary, I didn't know how brutal he was. But it's kind of one of those things, right? Like war is just not pretty for either side. And then it was good to see after the war, and then he kind of really not only that, and then he really worked his people to provide goods to trade, and then he noticed they were on the verge of starvation, change of law, and let them cultivate and survive. So it's just one of those things that war is very brutal. It happened, man, crazy, just Hawaiians amongst each other, just fighting just for political power, and that was happening. Actually, Hawaii, that was probably happening all over Polynesia during the decline
Yep.
of the Tuitonga Empire. So yeah, that's my thoughts there. Unless you have any kind of thoughts or anything, Tua.
No, just it's interesting to one of the things I thought that I wanted us to kind of just bring up to on the program is just a perspective of what happens when there's a vacuum and not a unifying
Yeah,
leadership. Division happens. You
yeah,
notice they didn't say that they always live like this, but they say during Kamehameha's time it broke into
pretty
to
brutal.
feuds, right? And then
Mhm.
what happens once Kamehameha unifies them? Peace happens.
Peace.
So that's something that I thought that was interesting looking at, potential correlations with the
Mm,
Kapu system, it being imported during the height of the Tuitonga Empire, some of the patriarchal structure of politics and military, and then also just we don't have to blame Western colonization for everything. It has its
mm,
weaknesses, it has its problems, but trust me, if Kamehameha had the technology and the power to invade England, he would have done so. The only
yes,
thing that
sir.
stopped him from doing it, he didn't have the technology, he didn't have the power to do so. Um,
Hmm.
and it just that's just human nature. And really, really cool to see. This is just a personal observation. It seems
Yeah,
like there are always these individuals that their lives seem to have the Lord's hand involved in them, in my opinion, right? From a very young age, these people have prophecies tied to them. They try to be killed when they're young. They
yeah,
happen to grow up in an environment where they learn, like you were saying earlier, they get exposure to the politics, the culture, and everything. And that's what they're using to get power. And then also when they get this power, they're freeing their people. And if you pay attention to what happens to a lot of the leaders around this time, a lot of it has to do with freedom. Late 1700s, early 1800s, you have Kamehameha, giving more freedom to the Hawaiians. You have Tupo the First coming in, giving more freedom to the people in Tonga, right? You have
yeah,
Abraham Lincoln in the U.S. giving more freedom. The Civil War is coming up, fighting to free the slaves, abolish slavery from the United States. So it's a very interesting time. It seems like around the world, England is trying to stop the slave trades out in
mm,
Africa. With all those things that are going on. So it's like there was a global move towards freedom, towards individual rights, and really shaking off old traditions that were restrictive and oppressing people
mm.
um, around that time. But just that's some closing thoughts there. And anything else, Masi? I think that's it. We don't have anything else for the program. We're hitting about an hour and a half. Any
Nice.
closing thoughts?
No. It's kind of like what you mentioned, Dua, that it was just human nature. If you had the resources to take over the world, people will use that, and then
Yeah.
during that time, because it's just human nature during that time. Obviously, now that it's kind of hard to start wars, but there's people. If people have the ability to still maintain power and obliterate the other country, they would. It's just that right now everyone has nuclear weapons, and you will not exist too if you use power. So I mean, it's just right now these day and of age, it's kind of like everyone kind of in the same kind of level playing field, and we've kind of witnessed and enjoy some of the prosperity that we have on this era. So it's just kind of the times, and looking forward to kind of discuss further maybe further documentaries, because I know there were times even in Tahiti, there were some people, some families that were, during the decline of the Tuitonga, they were trying to hold power, and then the French kind of came in and kind of took over them, and even Upolu and the Ha'amoa history with the whole Maria Toa and Mata'afa, they have a history with one siding with the Germans, one siding with the Americans, that kind of caused the whole separation with which is American Samoa still under America and used to be German Samoa. So this was happening all over Polynesia. So when
Yeah.
when there's a like you mentioned, when there's a vacuum, some prominent family or someone is going to see
We'll
an
try and fill
opportunity
it.
and just climb on that. Yeah, fill it. So, and that's how it was. But maybe we've kind of done Hawaii. Maybe we can touch on these other
Island
Polynesian
groups. Yeah.
island groups that we can kind of talk about their kind of history too. It would be interesting. That's all for me, Do I appreciate it.
Yeah. My closing thought is America has a lot of problems, a lot of challenges, but here's something really interesting and unique about America. After World War II, America could have taken over the world, and it didn't. And why do I say
That's
could have taken over the
absolutely
world?
true.
America had the nuclear bomb. No
Yeah.
one had a nuclear bomb. America literally could have said, I own planet Earth. You aren't going to line up with me. Let me drop a couple things and it'll change your mind. Right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how crazy it is that though the United States of America had absolute power, it didn't. And why it didn't? Because it was a democracy and constitutional republic. It's not built for empires, right? Just like we've discussed in the past, Matai system, not built for empire building. Tuitonga and a patriarchal system, hereditary, that is built for empire building. When you have a Matai system and you have a democracy, the leadership changes through votes and election, that you cannot consistently push a single agenda across the board. So I think that's something that's really important to remember. And that's why God says, don't have a king. Let me be your king.
Let there be
And
judges.
let there be judges. Let there be a prime minister. And, as a closing thought, don't label freedom when it's free for people to make choices. Don't label freedom as slavery just because you didn't like what the people chose.
Yeah.
Right? Whether
No.
in the US or in the kingdom, let the
Correct.
people choose, and what they choose is what it is. But don't label that as somehow we're not free when they're exercising their right to freedom of choice.
No, and you're absolutely right, Tua. And just to add on to like what you're saying, that America is very unique, very different compared to other big, most powerful country, because they had the capability, because they're already fighting in two fronts, already had their military in Europe, already had their military in Asia, and all of that, and even up to the Korean War. MacArthur, I think Douglas
Mhm.
MacArthur, he wanted to invade. This is like a fact.
Yeah, all the
He
way.
wanted to invade China and would have taken over China because Chinese were sending their own military in North Korea, and Americans were pushing them back. And we could have, Chinese were pretty fagaofa during that era. We could have just
They
bombed
removed
them.
MacArthur because of that. Because the US
Truman,
said no, and
yes,
MacArthur tried to push forward, and they said, "Okay, come back. You're done."
yes, and that's part of why America is unique, and that the world is a very, very better place. Even though America is not perfect, yes, there's a lot of internal issues and bad policies that have been made, but overall, America is still that beacon of light. Because without America, man, this would have been a crazy, crazy world, and what America could have taken over the whole world, because it did have that capability too. So just to add on to like what you're saying to it, but nah, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Let's hope we never get back to the days of trying to get each other's mana.
That's pretty brutal. That's pretty
Yeah,
brutal.
let's hope we don't have to do that, and let's don't go back to the days and pray and do what's right, so we don't have houses built out of people's skulls and bones. But
It sounds
yeah,
like some of the Maori warriors I hear here that they would, when they had their tribal fights, that they would cut their tribal's heads off, and then they would like take the head and kind of place it in their homes and stuff around. So
that's intense.
same,
That's
yeah,
intense.
same thing with the Hawaiians. Is heads, cutting the heads and taking them with you is the mana of getting the whole mana.
And with that saying of the mana, as always, be curious, ask the hard questions, and we're going to end, since we talk about mana, with the mana wave.
Mana
Aloha.
way.
Catch you guys next time.
Mix mana and aloha. Oh, wow.
Shaka mana wave.
Take care, everyone.
All right. Till next time. Thank you, everyone. Peace.